It's a ritual we do. It symbolizes our commitment to the collective consciousness. Yeah, it's similar to the group building exercises you would do at a camp as a kid. Bard didn't ask, but appreciated their unprovoked explanation. Bard had left the community for a few months and was familiar with their art rituals. She met the traveling commune at a musical festival a year back and decided to travel across the country with them, hopping from festival to festival. Bard was a quiet skeptic of the group's baseless spiritual practices, but she always agreed to join. They were usually harmless and drug fueled dance parties under the moon. She assumed this would be no different. The group took psychedelics frequently, which was the primary reason Byrd joined the first place. Their days were their days were filled with music trips, talks of the utopian and dopey laughter. This was enough for Byrd to tolerate their uninformed, amusing spirituality. On this particular night, they were somewhere in the expensive American desert as the moon reached its highest point. Byrd followed the rest of the commune towards the rock structure in the distance. The structure was illuminated by a fire built earlier that evening. This really is the dopest trip setting, everyone agreed. They amassed they amassed around the exhausting flames sitting. Everyone continued their chatter as a bird waited for the direction of some sort. After a few moments, one of the hippies stood and poured a bucket of water on the already dying fire. The immediate and undulating darkness brought about an abrupt silence. Conversations were cut off mid-word, and all the rustling from the fidgeting bodies also ceased within that second. The abruptness felt almost unnatural, as if a speaker blasting music was suddenly and accidentally unplugged. It startled Byrd because it was unlike anything she had experienced with the group. Their rituals were usually anything but silent. Byrd remained quiet to not to stick out. It continued for an uncomfortable amount of time. Byrd grew paranoid. Not that she suspected anything sinister, Byrd trusted the group and grew to love their eccentricities. Her paranoia was more the result of her darkness, silence, and psychedelic mixed into one. Rustling from someone climbing to their feet interrupted the silence. Finally, a man's voice announced that the ceremony had begun. He took a loud, deep breath and started chanting, Severodian, Severodian, etc. Severodian. What Byrd didn't know were whether to panic or to laugh. Severodian, Serenadian, etc. The man continued, and with each repetition, the pitch of his voice got higher and higher and higher. His words began turning into screeching as his pitch reached an increasingly inhuman frequency. The screeching turned into a ringing that induced overwhelming brain aches. Bird reached for her ears to shield the sound. She shoved her finger in and felt the thick liquid filling the orifice. No human was capable of producing this sound. Their bodies began to convulse and their screams grew primal. At the height of intensity, a stilling silence shocked the air. Byrd never lost consciousness, but her body lay paralyzed from fear. Moments passed and there were no signs or sounds indicating the movement. Byrd assumed everyone else was immobile with the shock as just as her. If it stays quiet a little, the sound of slicing, then leaking, eventually a plump disrupted the false comfort provided by the silence. Byrd covers her mouth to hush her harsh breathing. The unidentified sound repeats itself in the exact same order, as if it were a recording being paused, then played. The sound repeated few more times before Byron finally rolled to her side and prepared to look through the slits of her fingers. She kept her eyes low, focusing her vision on the ground directly next to her. Byron could make out nothing parallel to her on the ground. She cautiously shifted her vision higher. From this angle, she could make out a silhouette of something contrasting against the moonlit sky. After a second or two, her eyes adjusted enough for her to make out the figure. 2 feet dangled as if their attached body was being suspended in the air. Her eyes followed the feet up the hanging body when she finally discovered origins of slicing, leaking, and plumping. The neck of the body was severed. Its neck of the body was severed by an unknown source, followed by blood draining from the wound. The incision grew deeper until the body was fully detached from the head and fell to the ground, creating a plump. The sight caused shock to fully encompass her being as her consciousness faded to an abyss. A few weeks later, she regained her once lost consciousness when she woke up in the hospital in Nevada. The doctors told her she had been in a drug induced psychosis and they had to sedate her for several days. You are quite lucky that your friends weren't too far. You have wandered off and they said they found you deep in the desert. Quite creepy, right?